we've taken those learnings and figured out that we need to make sure we're continuing on this building block path where something can be used for multiple things. It means that for the customers or the users who just want to use it, that they can click, drag, and use, but also giving the people who want to configure and build with it the ability to. So a big thing I'm excited about is...
Hi, it's Simon, and you have found my complete interview with Head of Product and AI at Notion, Ekin Oflazer. We sat down at Make with Notion in London at the end of 2024, and this was a really fantastic conversation. And I think it is a great insight into how Notion is thinking about the development of their main app, the Notion app, and how AI can link into it in a way that is far less annoying and more useful than many of us have found AI in the past. With their recent release of things like Notion AI databases and some of the exciting features that are shifting into Notion Mail, like auto response, I think we could see more and more of this really happy assistant mode AI happening in the Notion workspace. And this was a really wide-ranging and interesting conversation with Ekin, and so I'm sharing the whole interview here so you can find out a little bit more about one of the key players behind Notion's development over the years, where Notion's going in 2025 and beyond, and how you play a massive part in what we get back from that platform. I hope you enjoy it. I'm gonna grab a coffee and listen. Well, first of all, thank you very much for meeting in London. This is really cool. Have you been before?
I come to London quite often. It's my second favorite city in the world, after where I was raised, which is Istanbul. But I love it. I don't know if you saw in the keynote, but one of the reasons I moved to the East Coast is to be closer to Europe. So time zone wise, trip wise, so.
Football references,
especially.
Is that a fact?
Yeah, I don't have to wake up at 5 to watch the games. I can wake up at 8 or 9 in the weekends. But yeah, I'm a big fan of London. Hopefully I can come out here more often.
And you're based in New York now as well?
I'm now based in New York. I spend a fourth of my time every month in San Francisco just because
you have to get there.
HQ is, but New York's a pretty large group for us, so spending a lot of time there.
Yeah. So Ekin, thank you so much for spending some time chatting about everything Notion, product, core, AI, right? Yeah. This is your role.
Yeah.
What does core mean, by the way?
So core product is just what everybody knows as Notion today, the entirety of that. We make that distinction because now we're going into calendar world and mail world.
Okay.
But core is like, what everybody experiences with the text editor, databases, how you receive notifications, team spaces, all the likes. And AI, just because AI is just like a new way that people are interacting, and building that as a separate entity felt like the right way, just given it's a different way of product building.
Yeah. Well, can you tell me a little bit about how you got into working with Notion, into this role? Like what drew you to the product? Because we all have our own kind of origin story, right?
Yeah,
Notion is one of those things.
Yeah, so I got introduced to Notion, before Notion I was actually at Dropbox. And I got introduced to Notion by somebody I used to work with who ended up joining Notion. And one of the reasons where I joined, the company was about 80-ish people, I want to say, about 35 engineers, 2 designers. And it was the first product manager role. And the way I thought about it was, I have admiration for this product. I don't really care what I'm going to do as long as I'm just going to be able to do it with these people and learn it from it. And when I joined, to be honest, the mandate was like, we just need product help. And coming to that meant, okay, I'm going to work on a product that I myself have not appreciated enough, but I have admiration for. And throughout the process of meeting Ivan and Akshay and Simon, I was just like, there's a huge vision here and a customer base that loves it. And a big kind of point in which I realized I made the right call is the minute I told my friends I joined Notion to help product, the number of feedback I got on Notion itself was indication of how much the product mattered to people. Because being a Dropbox product that's existed for a long number of time, towards the tail end you stop receiving feedback on it. Whereas with Notion it was just like every friend came in.
We all love it. We all love that dialogue, and I've loved that about the company. How when I've come as a creator, template creator or ambassador, whatever, just the sense of real, we want to know, we want to talk is really rare, actually, I think.
Yeah, I think it comes from the fact that we have a community in which that community and us feel like part of the same team. And I think it's also because how much our founders cared about the feel of the product and how it gives powers to people in terms of building their own applications. A lot of software tools are built in ways which is just, I'm going to give you a software and you're going to use it the way I have defined that you're going to use it, and that's it. And that leads to people just over time growing a level of kind of numbness to how the product improves. Whereas with Notion, it's always felt like we're building products, but we're also allowing others to build products. And that kind of leads to that nice feedback cycle. And we were actually talking about this during lunch, which is we have learned so much from our community in ways that we didn't know the product could be used. That has been like, this is just having like 10 more arms and 10 more people thinking about how to improve the product. That comes from just people who are passionate about it.
Yeah, it really comes across. It leads very naturally to the next question I'd written down, which is, it is such an engaged community. I'm sure you get all of these requests for features, improvements, feedback. Like, how do you make choices based on feedback? Do you sometimes have to go, we're the chef, you'll love this? Or what's the balance?
I don't think there's a blueprint for it, but there's definitely we have opinions on our product.
Yeah.
And sometimes a customer might ask for something and they might be quite prescriptive of what they ask for. And sometimes they might ask for something where we're like, we hear what you're asking for, but we really want to understand what you're trying to solve, because there might be a different way to solve it. And in doing that, we try to make sure that like both satisfy the customer, but show them what the future could be. It's always that quote that comes up is like, if I ask the customers, they just ask for faster horses instead of cars. Like, we want to find the middle there. Yeah. We don't necessarily have a process of like, how do we go about feeding this feedback into a decision making? It's more about what things we believe lift multiple boats at once. And as you know, like, we kind of build the building blocks, and we always think about, okay, new problem. Let's first go through our existing building blocks, a way to solve this. If it is, can we improve the way to solve it? If it isn't, what more do we need to add to solve it? We kind of go through this motion of, if something is technically possible, that doesn't mean it's the best way for customers to experience it. So how do we go from technically possible to first class? And sometimes, what are we missing as a building block, like charts? We couldn't solve charts before. How do we add that so that now the problem is solved for the customer, but then allows us to do even more and more with it?
That building blocks idea, first of all, I love it because I work for a theatre company where the concept of building blocks is built into how we give people creative tools.
Okay.
So the idea is that you start with simplicity and success and build up to complexity. I've really enjoyed the route you guys have been taking recently. That this feels like, you've released forms, layouts, charts is a really obvious example.
Yeah.
But when I look back at things like sprints, that felt like a different approach that maybe you've shifted away from. Is that true?
Yeah, definitely. We've gone through our motions. I joined the company when we were 80 people.
Yeah.
We're now close to 900 people. And we've definitely had the ups and downs of figuring out how do we solve the customer need in a way that doesn't feel heavy for the customer. And at times that meant we built something maybe a little bit more rigid that solved the need, but didn't give the user the flexibility and the power that we wanted to give them. And so we've taken those learnings and figured out that we need to make sure we're continuing on this building block path where something can be used for multiple things, but then it's more about the packaging of it than building a rigid feature. So how do we make sure, as I said, like technically possible to packaged in a way that feels first class, does not need to be rigid. It means that for the customers or the users who just want to use it, that they can click, drag, and use, but also giving the people who want to configure and build with it the ability to unwrap it. And I think with sprints, that wasn't necessarily the path we took, and we've taken those learnings, heard the customer feedback, and being like, okay, we could have done sprints in a better packaged way that allowed for both the user and the builder to operate in that world.
I think that's really exciting to hear. So, okay, if I kind of put you on the spot a bit more, I would love to see, for example, and I've had conversations with other Notinos about this, which is there a kind of simple mode, like a user mode and a builder mode? And we're kind of seeing that with layouts.
Yeah.
And that, as a template creator, that is the biggest single bit of feedback I get, which is, I want it to have all the power, but I want it to have the UX and the UI that I would expect from an app. And I think you're giving us the tools, but can we expect you to kind of look at it to create stronger building tools and simpler things aside for users?
Yeah, so the framework is very much that. It's like we think about 3 personas of users that we deal with: the user, the configurer, the builder. And the configurer is like somebody who just wants to make small changes to fit their need. And the builder is like, truly, I'm opening the layouts experience. I'm going to change how this thing looks. I'm going to change all the settings to it. The configurer is like somebody who goes into a database and says, I want to group it by X, right? And then the user is just, I want to land into a database and just use it. We want to make sure for the people who are just users, which turns out in like a company environment, that's the majority of users.
Do you think that's true of Notion? Most people are users?
Well, if you think about it, for every builder and configurer, there's probably n many users that they're working with. Ideally, we get everybody passionate about it, where they move through that spectrum of user to configurer to builder, but we also don't need everybody to be a builder. And we want to create an experience where they can coexist, but they don't have to get exposed to each other that much, because we want the product to feel simple and beautiful, while also powerful, which is a very, very hard balance to strike. But I think it comes from the top. Our founders and Ivan, they care about that, and we are willing to kind of think about the future in that world versus trying to make those short-term sacrifices that won't lead to a better future.
I love that. User, configurer, builder.
Yeah.
I might have to ask my audience which one they are.
Yeah.
Let us know. I did the whole, that was a bit much.
We even have a dashboard internally where you can enter your own user ID.
Yeah.
And it tells you basically by defining the product, how your sophistication level based on what you use in the product, to say have you been maybe not using automations as a Notino?
Yeah.
It kind of gives you a sense of maybe I should go try these. I haven't tried it. We have little competitions like that internally where we're okay, new people, how can we get them to become more advanced users of Notion?
I love that. I'd love to see the analytics of where my effort goes.
Not something we expose to users right now.
No, I'm just saying, that sounds really fun. Yeah,
it definitely is.
Take a moment to drop me a comment and let me know what you make of all that. I think it's very exciting times to be a Notion user, particularly if you are coming to it fresher. Hit the like button if you haven't, get subscribed, and let's continue with the interview. I found Notion just before lockdown. There's always a reference, right, kind of 2019, 2020. Yeah. And I think what drew me to it was the design. There was this real sense of an awareness of great design being about what you leave out.
Yeah.
But also about that, you say, that balance of beauty, of form and function.
Yeah.
And then when I turned up to one of your events, to one of your offices, you go, oh, this is all of the design classics and furniture that I love. So I'm looking forward to those conversations, right?
Yeah.
What are you actively finding that you're leaving out, or how do you decide what to go no to?
I think it's a tough one. I don't have a great answer for it. There's a balance of what we say no to, and then retroactively what we realized wasn't a right call. Because we don't want to live in a world where decisions feel one way. With new information, with new thinking, with a new perspective, you want to be able to say, maybe this wasn't the right call. How can we improve it? Or how can we even take it away because it's adding more weight than value to users? And a lot of times what we'll try to do is, I don't know if you've ever heard from Akshay or Ivan this, but how do we prevent entropy in the product? Which is, if there's something that already solves it, that maps to users' mental models, how do we not create multiple versions of it and kind of leverage the existing thing that is in the product? That's maybe my easiest answer in how we say no. We can definitely get better at it, but.
I think a good example would be, I know a load of project management people might love a burn down table, but we can make that in charts.
We can.
So that's great. So actually we don't need to go, here's a burn down chart.
True. But again, as I mentioned, like we can do it. How do we make it so that you don't need to be super advanced to be able to do it? That's the important part. And so I think that's the, like, we think about that, have the capabilities and then how you package them. Those to be very complementary things versus feeling like it's one or the other.
Yeah. All right. So, okay, saying no to things, fine. I think it's really important. I've been trying to say no more recently.
Yeah.
It's good. Then you've got space to go. You know, I think it's Derek Sivers. You can then say hell yeah to the things you really want to do.
Yeah.
Okay. So what's something that you're super excited to be working on at the moment that's getting you fired up, or that feels like a new route for Notion?
Yeah. So a big thing I'm excited about is obviously AI related, but like what AI is ideally going to do that everybody wants it to do that nobody's really seen yet, which is, okay, I can find information using AI. I can write information using AI. But what if AI just completed that workflow itself for me in a way that kept me in the loop, but gave me superpowers, which is, you know, Notion's a place that a lot of companies trust with their knowledge, but knowledge is one where you constantly duplicate it, write more, discuss in different places. How can you get the AI to make sure that you yourself are aware of what's to be trusted and not trusted from a reader perspective, but also from a writer perspective? If I've written a doc and I realize others have written conflicting information in my workspace, how can I be better informed to know that I need to update my doc or go speak to the person who wrote the other thing to make sure that we're aligned? Very simple example of this is, like, you can imagine a product manager writing a product requirement doc with saying like a launch date is X, and then realizing that somebody in a Slack conversation said, here's a blocker, date has actually moved to 2 months after. Yeah. The next engineer who lands on that product requirement doc, knowing that that date has changed because of a Slack conversation, is important, because then you go from knowledge existing to knowledge being trusted. And trusted is like a big thing we want to work towards. And a lot of that historically has been manual. And how can AI make that more programmatic in a way that supports you rather than adds work to you?
Yeah, people finding how to use AI. We don't want it to do everything. And sometimes we think that it's, I think a lot of users kind of go, it's all or nothing. It will write something for me or not. But actually that idea where it does the small bits based on your leadership feels really great. Yeah. Nice. I love it. Okay. Collaboration tools often struggle to balance the individual and team needs. How do you tackle that challenge in designing Notion? Because you have, I mean, my audience, a lot of them are personal productivity. We've got the startup world, and then you've got huge enterprise. How do you tackle designing for that spectrum?
Probably equally as hard as the user configurer builder.
Right. It's another one.
Yeah, and also because the interesting thing is, we talk about the single player using the product and multiple people using the product, but even single player itself can be broken down into, I use it for personal productivity and I use it for productivity at work before myself, right? Like a person who might say, I want to take notes in here, and I don't really want to include my teammates, not ready yet, versus the person who's like, I'm writing my journals in here. Finding the way to build for those is tough. I think what we are now starting to rethink is, how can we expose the product more progressively to users as they potentially go in that journey? Somebody might start, somebody might start with personal productivity, doing their own things, recognize that I can also use this at work. And then how does bringing somebody else in start exposing more things that they can do with this other person without burdening them before they bring other people? I think those are probably other things I would say from the past that we could have done better. We are now working towards fixing and iterating on, but that's progressive disclosure is kind of like what we're trying to focus on as it relates to single player all the way to collaboration.
The Echo is so fun. So as a creator, I create a number of templates, but 2 complete life operating systems basically. So it's everything. And there's one that also combines content management and project management basically to run this channel. And so I built this thing, and my early users have kind of come with me, the early audience, and they kind of get it. And then when I released a template last year, I had exactly the same thing where it just, everything wasn't optimized for those newer people that were finding me.
Yeah.
And I had this big onslaught of people going, I love it, but I'm overwhelmed. And you're building a tool to help people stop being overwhelmed.
Yeah.
So we've been following you, I think. So in my template this year, I've done exactly the same thing. I've gone, how can I just get right back to the smoothest onboarding and UI I can make? And it's really shown. Like, there's a lot happier people. And you've given us the tools, like buttons, to do that.
Yeah.
Many users have built some really powerful use cases. Can you tell us about one example that got you really excited, or that you really went, oh wow, that's a cool use of Notion I didn't spot?
Well, I think the one you mentioned earlier, which was we launched charts.
Yeah.
And burn down charts is something we explicitly were like, this is not something that we're going to have in the first pass.
Yeah.
But then learning that combination of the building blocks can do it. That to me is impressive, and a use case that I was impressed mostly because, and this has happened multiple times, where it's something that somebody has created without us having known that it can be created.
Yeah.
Another one we saw, it's like a small one, but I always find importance in sharing it, is when we launched Notion AI, like the Writer AI, early 2023, out of nowhere, we learned one of our creators using it to create diagrams with mermaid code. And how people went from, oh, this is generating text for me, to I can ask it to create a diagram. And it was just like an unlock that we learned from our users and our community. And those use cases to me are always the most interesting. The third one I'll say is, I've seen one of our customers create early versions of Notion Mail in Notion way prior to us having Notion Mail, which is they created two databases. One's an inbox, one's an outbox. And they basically use the person property to have, like, when they put, say, your name in there, you receive a notification saying you've been tagged in this, and then there's a relation between the two. And this was like, I think a European customer who was just like small, created it, they didn't want to use email. And they basically created like an inbox, outbox in a way that they wanted it to be shared so that teams could see the communication. And that to me was like another impressive one I've seen.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's like going deep, isn't it? Yeah. I did the mermaid thing to create a map of the linked databases in my template.
Amazing.
Took a few goes, I had to check it, but it did it. It's amazing.
Perfect.
Right, quick fire, you ready? Last ones. You've got to kind of do the shortest answer you can do.
Okay.
Because this is what you do in interviews, so I thought I'd try it.
Yeah, let's do it.
One piece of advice to a new Notion user from scratch. First bit of advice.
Pick a use case and try to build it using as many Notion building blocks as you can.
I love that, it's a challenge. Okay, if you were a Notion, I heard Robbie say this, if you were a Notion block, what would you be?
Ooh, I think a toggle.
Why?
I think it's unique to Notion, but also it's one of those things where you have to be succinct for what's visible, and you can hide a bunch of the mess underneath, but it gives people a way to just get the short version or get the detailed version in a single go.
You're just saying I'm a lot deeper under the surface, aren't you, really?
Yeah, it's like the iceberg.
Yeah, I'm the tip of the iceberg,
Yeah.
okay. Form or function, if you had to choose?
Oof, that's a tough one. I'm a PM, so at heart, I think it's function. And that's where I think my partners keep me well in check on how we need to balance that form.
Do you drink coffee?
I do not.
Okay. Tea?
Yeah, I'm Turkish, so we do late night tea. So like 10, 11 p.m. tea that keeps us going for the rest of the night.
I'll save the pour over or espresso for Ivan then. Database or page? One word?
I think databases. Yeah.
I want to ask more, but we haven't got the time. Your most used feature in Notion, do you reckon?
Probably these days, AI. I think that's the
Yeah. It's been such a pleasure to chat to you. Thank you so much, Ekin.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, man. This was great.
Well, thank you to Ekin for a really great conversation, and to Notion for setting that up. And you can watch the companion interview to that happened with Notion's founder and CEO, Ivan Zhao. Links somewhere here. Until then, make sure you get subscribed, click on my face and turn on the bell, and I will therefore see you on the next video, because one of these could really help you out with learning more about how to get your workflow in check. See you later.